My name is Caitlin McConnell, and I'm here today with Florence Clinkingbeard and her daughter, Toni Clinkingbeard and Dyne, two owners of Clinkingbeard Funeral Homes. We're visiting today as part of the Buried History Oral History Project, which is a collaboration between Ozarks Alive and Missouri State University Libraries. The date is September 17th, 2024, and we're visiting at Clinkingbeard Funeral Homes location in Ava. So
Kirk now, his name should be in there.
Yeah, and we can mention Kirk, my brother. He's
For sure.
Co-owner.
And we'll get into this probably later, but is it where you kind of are in Ava and he's in Gainesville, or do you both do everything?
We do everything. We have a manager in Gainesville.
Okay.
But we're primarily up here in Ava.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, kind of, and I'm sure we'll get back to that again in a minute, but could you kind of start at the beginning and tell me how the funeral home got started in the first place, when and just all the details as you two know them.
You know
that
what year
was-
it started?
Well, initially 1914, Mama.
Wow.
My great-grandfather and my great-grandmother, my grandfather and my great-aunt started it on the square, and it was called Clinkingbeard Furniture and Undertaking.
And they bought clothing and made caskets in a lot.
Wow.
Bought material at the store they had to line the caskets.
Wow.
I remember as a little girl making them under a walnut tree in the yard.
So you would make them too?
Well, I was there, and yes, I helped do
Later
one
on.
casket.
Wow.
She helped
But I said
build
no more.
one.
Wow.
Because there's just too much to it.
Well, and back in 1914, make sure I understand this right, as I understand it, this was an era when people would still have funerals at home.
Yes,
So,
they would. My
In
grandfather.
churches.
But back then, Mama, they would lie in state in the home. My grandfather would go on the call, or my great-grandfather. My grandfather was licensed to embalm. So then they would take the body back in the home and lie in state in the home, maybe for a few
Yes,
days.
I did that some.
Was that a few
With your
days,
daddy.
Mama? Did they lie in state for...
Maybe only a day and a night. But the people would sit up all night. Some of them, some of their neighbors.
wow. Well, and kind of going back to the beginning when you started, how did your family come here? Had they been here for a while and just decided to get into the furniture?
They were on a farm,
Okay.
and they sold this farm. And
West-
started on the square.
west of Ava?
Okay. I wonder why they decided this was what they wanted to do.
Well, honey, that's so long ago.
I'm sure they saw the need.
Yeah, there was a need. There wasn't one.
Well, and so in those early years, was it more people came in, they bought a casket and took it home, or were you all kind of there the whole time helping with embalming and things too?
My husband was a very professional embalmer. He took his work to make people the very, very best they could look. He took a lot of pains with it.
But back then, your question...
Like in 1914, 19...
Yeah.
They
those
embalmed them at home,
so
at their home.
So they did that at home too then, Mama. Okay. They would have done it at the facility or at home, I guess. And
Yeah,
there was,
at home a lot
back
of it.
then, the techniques, I guess they could.
They did.
My grandfather's not here to tell me.
Well, I
But
know
now Daddy would
stories.
have done the embalming here on the facility.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He went to school 2 or 3 years to accomplish this embalming and everything.
And back then, it was St. Louis Mortuary.
Okay.
Back then. That would have been in the 1950, 51, somewhere in
Well,
there.
54, Dad and I were married, and he had been to the service for 14 years.
14 months, you mean?
I mean, 14 months
all right.
overseas.
In Korea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had he become an embalmer before he went overseas, or was that...
Yes,
Okay.
he was. And it helped him in the service. They put him on research.
Ah,
Scientific research.
Wow.
Because he had so much science. I really thought Daddy would be embalming over in Korea.
Wow.
For the
didn't.
soldiers. But he had so much medical background. They put him in communicable disease research over in Korea,
wow.
which is kind of neat.
That is really neat. Well, and just to make sure I get the lineage right, it was his parents who started it.
His grandfather.
His grandfather.
And grandmother.
So how many generations are you on at this point?
So I would be fourth. My
Wow.
brother and I are the fourth, which is kind of rare.
Kirk, that's what his name should be.
Okay,
Yeah.
Kirk.
Kirk.
Kirk. But my dad, he was a little boy, and then when my grandparents built this, the original building, Daddy was 9 years old, and he had
Lived
always
here.
had interest in the business. He had an older brother that didn't as much, Uncle Gene, but Dad loved learning the business.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and then we were raised in it.
Well, and remind me when it was you got out of the furniture business and then moved here, because that happened at the same time, right?
In 39.
In
Pretty
39.
much, yes.
Okay. How did you ever hear anything about why or how they decided to do that, to stop doing furniture and just focus on the
Well,
funeral?
they didn't. Maybe all of them liked the farming
Okay.
and wanted to get their family in more of a business thing where they could make a living.
Well, and I'm sure in 39 they saw the need growing more and more for ambulance, for
Yes.
funeral industry, and all of that. So,
Ambulance was nothing but an expense to the funeral home back then.
but it was
The
such
county didn't buy any of it.
Wow.
So it was when the government wanted to take it over, it helped the funeral directors a lot
yeah.
because they had a tax on it.
That was in 1971, 72 before it became tax supported.
Okay.
But I think my family saw the need to devote full time in the county because we were the only ones. So.
Well, and that's, from what I've read, there was sort of that transition from doing funerals at home into a funeral home itself.
Right.
And I guess that would sort of line up
I
time-wise
don't know
when...
where you got it at home. What do
Well,
you mean?
early years where they would lie in state at the home.
Yeah, but they had no funeral at home.
It would go to the church.
Yes.
Okay.
But they would lie in state.
They
in
lie in the state.
Yeah.
But taken to a church.
After, yeah. Well, and so you built the building here, and then did the ambulance service start at the same time in 39, or was that afterwards?
Now that's a good question.
It started, the ambulance did. It was just something funeral homes did.
Family funeral homes back
Yes.
then. So
Because it was a service and there wasn't one. See?
And so I'm sure that was a big help to families to be
Yeah,
it
able to do
was.
that.
But it was such an expense later on.
it was quite a burden for the family. Our family had started, I think, the ambulance part, Caitlin, maybe in the 1940s.
Maybe.
And then my grandfather,
But his daddy started to school to be an embalmer.
Okay.
Law's daddy, Clarence.
my grandfather.
Okay.
And his father got sick and he had to come home to run it. So he kind of got his experience on the side, some of it.
Just more
But
back
he
here.
didn't get to finish that degree because of his daddy got sick.
Oh, you mean WR?
Yeah.
My great grandfather.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, and so you said you married into the family in 54.
Yes.
Did you know that you would be part of the business from the beginning, or did you kind of decide that later on?
Actually, at first it kind of scared me. And yet I wasn't a scary person. I was 22 years old. And I'd worked and saved my money for some reason to buy my own vehicle. Didn't have the money to go to school. So I went to work. And actually, my dream back then was going in real estate.
Really?
But I dropped that completely when my husband and I got married. But I got into it later to make money. So we could borrow money to build this new chapel.
When you got married in 54, did you become a funeral director then, or was that a little bit later on?
A little bit later on, because my oldest daughter is 70 now.
She was born in close around that time.
Okay.
And Kirk and then Toni's the
She
baby.
was, before she did the funeral home, you were selling Avon, weren't you? She was selling Avon back then.
I was a salesperson all my life. I liked it,
Really?
but I stopped a lot of that to help him.
And then when Daddy said, come and help us, then Mom jumped in. And then probably soon after that got your license, the funeral director's license, yeah.
Well, and so explain that part to me. There's different categorizations of people's roles, right? You can be an embalmer, you can be a funeral director. What do those things mean?
Well, an embalmer, if you didn't embalm a body, it had to be buried within so many hours.
Back
Maybe
then.
24 or in that range. Because deterioration would begin, see? Disease and stuff.
And of course, back then, things were much more traditional, Caitlin, and embalming was done much more, or immediate burial. Now, cremation started coming in, and then we started offering that. But Daddy had the embalmer license and the funeral director's license, both. So he could do it all. Mother was only licensed to do funeral directing, so that means you can sit down with the family and make the arrangements and sell. So that gives you the credentials to sell.
I did that later on in years after the kid was a little bit older.
I see.
Sell funerals. And I said to the casket company that we believed in, Batesville Casket Company.
It's out of Batesville, Indiana.
Okay.
I wanted to go to that factory. Back then, they only took men. I said, now, wait a minute. If I'm going to sell these, I want to see how they're put together.
Wow.
And they sent me, and my husband went with me.
But they did invite Mom, so I think you might have been the first woman
I
to
was the first
tour
woman.
The manufacturing company in Batesville, Indiana.
That's so amazing.
Well, I wasn't afraid. I thought that's the way we're going to make a living.
Yeah.
You need to know about it.
As we went along, we got busier and got children. In 5 years, we had 3 children.
You were busy.
I was very busy. But fortunately, I had a babysitter a little bit of the time, but most of the time I could be there for my children.
How has the funeral service changed, or the expectations, I guess? I've heard, people talk about in the past there used to be definitely a day for visitation or maybe multiple days for visitation, and then you'd have the funeral. How has that changed over time?
It's changed quite a bit, Caitlin. Yeah. It was, when I was growing up, I'm almost 65, and we lived right by the funeral home, so this was like a second home for me. But traditionally, Mother and Dad and my grandparents would have a funeral visitation the night before, but a loved one would lie in state 2 or 3 days at least. And now, of course, the economy and society, it's changed so much. We still do both with traditional, but we do cremations, and we have a crematory here on our premises too.
We've only had that
seen the need.
crematory. How long?
We started it in 2018.
Crematory,
and then
it's
we
right
have-
down below the house.
Okay.
We have licensed embalmers and licensed funeral directors and cremationists. but we saw the need that we need to keep up with the times. So we're working hard to do that and to try to keep our costs down, Caitlin. Ever since we started our website, we've always publicized on our website our prices. We believe the consumer, the way this society is today, the consumer needs to see and know what's what.
And we try to keep it down because we know where we live, and it's not a high-costy area. But right now, it's getting outplaced. Everything's too high for most people.
In general, for our whole country, I guess. Okay.
Yeah.
But for our community, we've strived to keep costs down.
Yes.
But take care of our employees and add the benefits for them, but try to keep our costs down. So that's why we just like to remain independent and family owned.
This was the first chapel part right here that you're in.
Yeah, this was built in 39.
Wow.
So this was the main chapel here.
Wow.
One day, Toni, Kirk, and Lyle and I got in a car and we went to Kansas City area and toured lots of funeral homes. And when we got back, we went to an architect and he started drawing the plans that we had sketched on paper and everything. And some way the good Lord has given us talent to do that.
Wow.
That we wasn't afraid to.
And then that's when we did this out
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
And this was built 30-some years ago, the new chapel.
Yeah, what we call the new was built in 89.
And then this, we came in here right after that and redecorated it. We papered it.
It looks really nice.
And
New
it is
flooring.
an overflow that we can seat 500 people in this, but most of them we can take care of in our new chapel. And that was a dream of,
Yours and Daddy's.
I guess,
Yeah.
Lila, Toni,
And my
I.
grandparents, too. They were able to get to see it. So
Yeah.
that was neat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Granddaddy said, we tried to borrow $50,000 to start out, and that was to buy a piece of land. And then in the community, there was a lot of men buying farms, selling them, making money. I thought, uh-oh, if my husband says it's all right, I'm going to start. We're going to make some money. We borrowed $50,000, and I had 7 or 8 left, is all, of my experience working, saving. And when we bought the pieces of farms, we would roll them over.
To make some
And
money.
we always shared with the rollover money with our kids. All 3 of it.
Wow. What?
So,
But the business, yes, Caitlin, has changed. And you've probably seen it, too change so much.
I mean, I grew up in Webster County, so I was by Marshfield. And I mean, I have not gone to, I guess, that many funerals in my life, but I remember even when my great-grandmother died and things felt different than the ones I've gone to in recent years. You know, and it's just, the whole aspect of this world fascinates me because I think that there's so much tradition and meaning that has been wrapped up in a lot of the things that I've read about in the past, especially, you know, the sitting up and even yesterday, Mr. Alcorn mentioned something I'd never heard of with the flower card reading. I'd never heard about that before. He said that was something that happened here for a long time.
We did that a long time. It was like during a visitation, and when florists bring the flowers, I think anywhere, there's duplicate cards on there. Well, for some reason, our families wanted us to read the cards. So back then, it would be my grandmother, and then later on, Daddy and Mom would do the readings. They would just read the flower cards to the family at the visitation.
and then we
was
give
something-
all of those, there's 2 copies on it.
Yeah.
Give that one to the family when we put the funeral was over and everything.
Now we haven't, that is kind of dissipated, but recently we just had a funeral, and the wife, she just lost her husband, and I think you might know the wife, but she approached me and she says, Toni, can we have a flower reading? And I said, well, sure, Jean, we can do that. So we did it that evening.
Wow.
And that was just recent. They were used to that and wanted that, and I said, sure, if you want that, we'll do it.
Do you know if that was a Douglas County thing, or was that wider spread that I just wasn't unfamiliar with it?
Was not wider spread. Some of the 9th District funeral directors didn't like it that we did that.
So I think my grandparents maybe might have started that.
it.
I wonder why they didn't like it. That sounds like a nice tradition.
Well, it was a lot of big pronouncing names. It was a difficult...
Back then they were handwritten. And my grandmother was pretty good at reading them. Daddy and Mom would do it together. I don't know, but I all I know is I think my grandparents started doing it.
Wow.
So,
are there any other traditions that were kind of common in the past that you just don't do anymore or have really changed?
I think
some of them are trying to go back in time. And it's not good on the family. Because psychologists have already told most of us that is not good for the grieving person. They need to walk through this with their family, with their friends, especially their church family.
What do you mean by going back in time?
You mean the negative, you mean going over their death or something, Mom? Or to focus?
You just walk through it as a person that's lost a loved one to help you get through it with your friends.
In other words, talk about it.
Christian people.
And to talk about their needs and to bring it out and acknowledge their grieving.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and that's sort of what question I had too, was I know it feels like there's fewer funerals than there used to be, or people will wait and they'll do a cremation and plan to do something later. That's just my anecdotal viewpoint from an outside perspective. I don't know if that is what you're seeing, like people just don't.
Some do. Some do.
They're not as dedicated, honey.
They're
as your older, steadfast Christians.
Well, I think families today some families, Caitlin, we're dealing with, they're very private. They move here from other areas, and they prefer cremation, and then they want to do it on their own. And we encourage that to do something. Not that we have to jump in and do a memorial service, but we do encourage the family, listen, I hope you will take the time to do something at home or celebrate your husband or your wife or your child. But yes, that is happening a little bit more.
But it helps them to go through these things.
Through the process, yeah.
And that's
the process.
Well, that's what I wondered too, is if you thought there is, from everything you've seen, emotional value in having a funeral or some kind of service to mark
to go through, and it's healing for the family. It is definitely healing. Visitations we encourage, and we don't charge. I mean, we just charge a one-time fee, along with our services and everything. And we encourage visitations if they're able. I said that's when the community wants to reach out to you, and it helps to see your friends and loved ones. It does help the healing process.
It helps a grieving person if you can walk up to them and they're in deep grief and offer a hug. It helps them because it's sharing the grief with them. And our families could always do that.
to this day, I mean, we know, since we grew up here, we know a lot of people in the community. I still see my friend that lost her daughter, and I never stray away from mentioning her daughter's name and talking about it, because you don't ever want to forget and remember the love and the life she had before she passed, and to acknowledge that.
We used to have big funerals in the country, and we could not seat them in the church. The church was never big enough. And then also, you had outside toilets. And that was a big improvement by doing the chapel.
Through the years.
We did go into many, many more in our new chapel, because we had room, we had bathrooms, and well, it was just a help to them.
Do you feel like people see death differently now than they used to? Like I think about the funerals I've read about in the country, that it was, I don't want to say it was a reunion, but it was almost like people maybe they expected it to be happening. They were going to go. It was important. But today people maybe they don't want to think about it as much. Is that accurate? You
kind of see that with families, and especially maybe our cremation families.
Yeah.
Not seeing the value maybe in that, but that's their own personal beliefs. Of course, I don't go into that or anything. I just encourage them to do something like at their home. But yes, we see that, Caitlin. We're in a more rural community, so I'm sure in the metropolitan areas is seen much, much more.
We're in a better community for caring. People slows down a little the more they do in the big cities.
Yeah.
They take a little more time, and most of them are in church activities, and all do it together. Then you don't feel, you let God down by not doing it that way.
There's more of a sense of community around.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
right. And the relationships. And we have a lot of families that we've taken care of all through these years, and still taking care of them. So there's friendships and relationships that are there too, and encouraging. And the Christian aspect as a mother is so important.
Very important.
I think. But anyway, we
One
try to
thing-
respect everyone, of course.
One thing is, I don't think any one of our 3 children ever remember a Sunday that they were not in church.
Well, and then a lot
Sunday
of times
school.
then you would come over here and work.
Oh,
Because the business is 24/7. But yeah, that's right, Mama. Being raised and then having that compassion with people is so important.
Yes,
and I think that's where
it
your
is.
faith comes in, I think.
I think today it's sad. There's so many divorces that it really throws some of the young people today. I've seen some of them now going through things like that, and they just they need God's help, and they don't seem to have been shown.
But
A big loss.
but the businesses, we've been fortunate and blessed, and
We have been blessed.
being able to keep up with the times, Caitlin. But and that our striving to just really take care of all families today, and that's why we have the crematory now. And
when did you see greater interest in that, in cremations? Was that around, you said 2018 was when you installed it. Was that early?
It would have been probably in the 90s, early, 2000, we starting seeing more need.
Yeah.
And then it growing, and then by the time 2018 came along, or 2015 maybe, we started talking about, we need to do
We
something.
need to build one.
Before that, would you send the person elsewhere and then like to
We
Springfield?
would take them as far as St. Louis.
Oh, wow.
Oh, years and years ago,
Oh.
Mother and Daddy had to go all the way to St. Louis.
Wow.
Because Springfield, I don't think even maybe
Wow.
back then had a crematory. But when I was growing up, then we would start taking loved ones to Springfield.
Okay.
And we worked with our vault company, Wilbert Vault Company, to help take care of our cremations. And they did it for years for us.
We don't push cremations. God was not cremated.
Well,
And
this is our
it-
personal view.
Well, it's personal, but it also, in the Bible, you don't find it. You know that.
But we saw as a business that we needed to offer that need,
Yeah,
Mama.
yeah.
Right. And Mom was instrumental in seeing that, and my brother and my dad, all of us. And Mom was forthright in seeing, having that business savvy.
We did our own
Caitlin.
decorating and planning because we couldn't afford it hardly back then. And it saved money that some way we were, as I say, given a gift to do that.
And the Lord's helped us. Right. Yeah.
You know, kind of going back to the funeral service itself, has the kind of the format of those changed much over time? I mean, is it pretty standard? It's just kind of been updated with what?
Yeah, it's been updated. We might have more, we don't have as many live musicians singing on funerals. We do more canned music, or the families say, well, I want Vince Gill, I want, this and this. So we do more of that. I still believe having live music is still really nice to have that relationship connection with the family. We don't do that as much. We still do it. And then we've probably seen more families jump in and be involved. And I encourage that. And then I'll just do an order of service per the way the family wants it. So, but we still have a lot of traditional funerals where we have the minister and
Would it help to show her some of the bigger folders, how they're put down for the pastor, the preacher?
yeah, we can show that to Caitlin later,
Yeah.
Mama. And Caitlin's probably seen that going to funerals. But yes,
Who's speaking, who's singing,
but now
pallbearers.
it's we do so many different things, Caitlin. Now I just adapt to what the families. I listen to the families and say, "Oh yeah, we can do that. We can."
So I guess their interest in being involved is different than the past in that way, that they
Right.
want to be able to have more personalization maybe than...
Probably, maybe some,
Okay.
yeah. Uh-huh. And them having a role in it, yeah. I think, and that's good. That's a good thing.
You know, one thing we didn't talk about yet is the progression to where you're involved and your brother's involved. And was that just always kind of the expectation in terms of what you thought you were going to do, or how did you decide that you wanted to become involved?
Oh, I don't know. I grew up in it, and my dad and Mom were awfully good and positive. They didn't want me scared of anything. Of course, we had the ambulance business at that time. And when I was a little girl, the embalming room, the door would be shut, of course, and I would talk to my daddy
Through the door.
and then as I got older, and I never saw ever anything inappropriate, but Daddy started encouraging me slowly, and then Mother, and then I got much more involved in my 20s, and then my brother, he's always kind of been in
Well,
it.
he helped at Gainesville, for instance.
Right, he worked in Gainesville with our
helped
director down there.
remodel jobs. He was good with the hammer. He was he's talented also in what to do. And some way we were just fortunate that all of us could sit down and put it together and make it look pretty good.
When did the facility in Gainesville open? And you said you have a manager there. Is it mainly if somebody wants to have a service in Gainesville, but the rest of everything happens here, or is it too?
No, it's a full service.
Okay.
Now, we handle the cremations for Gainesville, but they do everything else.
Okay.
And that started in 1940.
Oh, so basically,
so Gainesville, Ozark County, we've had that down there since 1940.
so 1939 and 1940 were like really big years for you guys building this and opening that one too. Wow.
Yeah. And we've been very fortunate to have great managers down there through the years and working with them. Now, Daddy would go down there maybe and have to embalm a loved one. But our manager, Charlie Fish, back then, he could embalm. And then before him, the manager was an embalmer too.
Wow.
So we still work close, but they were able to handle things pretty much on their own.
It just made the service 35 or 9 miles closer.
Yeah.
And the community, Gainesville. After we remodeled and built the new chapel, we went down there because they asked us, when are you going to make ours bigger?
Oh.
Well, we knocked out 12 foot of the end and made the back chapel bigger. And
And then that was
decorated
remodeled
it.
down there soon afterwards. So
We spent a lifetime getting this funeral where it will take care of us. We can seat most all of them every time now in the new chapel.
Back then, we were having big funerals, and we have seen the numbers shift. You were asking about that. When I was growing up, we would have bigger funerals in numbers than the visitations. Now things have kind of flip-flopped, where we'll have maybe bigger visitations and not as many people can attend the funeral possibly. But yeah, we can seat in there around 350, and then we can open this up with a screen. We put a screen in here, and it's an overflow, so we can seat in here. But that has changed through the years too.
Do you have a guess as to why that's flipped?
I'm guessing maybe work, maybe Caitlin, where through the years people wouldn't let people off work. Maybe I don't know, and then maybe the interest in reaching out. I don't know, but
What was the question
visitations.
now?
The shift of more people going to visitations than the funeral,
Probably the work
which
related.
makes sense.
A lot of people
I
have to
think
go
they
to work.
still ones that are closest try to come to the funerals because they do appreciate being comfortable in the bathrooms and everything here.
But we're talking about the numbers, yeah. With
Well, the
visitations and funerals, it's shifted through the
Yeah.
years, yeah.
Gotten
And I think
better.
work, the work is industry. People have to work.
They do. It costs too much.
Yeah. I apologize. I jump around all over the place
No,
because
that's all
I'm like,
right.
I'll think of another question. One thing I was going to ask too was the native stone that you used to build the building. Do you know any? Was it just you liked natives, or your ancestors liked native stone? Was it was there any information about that? If there's not, that's fine. But I know Ava has a lot of buildings that look around the same.
Sandstone.
Yeah, and if that was just kind of a thing at that time.
I'm assuming it was.
Yeah.
The sandstone, she's asking about our initial building here. Why the sandstone?
Well, we had competition against us. And the lady...
No, I'm talking about the sandstone of the 1939
I know, I'm
building.
fixing to say.
Okay.
And they built a smaller funeral home. And she called me, I won't call her name, and said, "What are you going to do with your rocks now?" And I just said to her, "Stand back and watch."
Oh.
True statement.
No, but the question, Mom, is the sandstone.
The
original.
sandstone.
Yeah.
Is
So,
still some of it.
so was it Was it just more common back then?
Yeah,
In
and less
1939?
expensive
Less expensive, okay.
than brick.
So
and,
Mom's saying the quality and it was easier to get and it was less expensive.
Well, it's beautiful.
So,
And very
yeah.
distinctive. So I'm glad that was used.
I think it's neat.
Yeah.
And we wanted to retain, when we bit this,
Mm-hmm.
remember we wanted to retain a lot of the sandstone, the
Yeah.
heritage and the history.
So we're built around this whole place.
Right.
And the front porch, it opened up where we could build places to park the family. My husband wanted 3 stalls out here on this big porch. And we bought a house and moved that house in order to have enough room to build a chapel and
And go
2
that
full
way, yeah.
parking places
Yeah.
Wow.
for family.
But that is a good question, Kayla. I never thought about that. But the sandstone, I guess, was less expensive and
Yes.
easier to get. And
Well, that's
Anyway.
what they had to build with.
Yeah.
back
you know,
then,
at 93 years, lots of things has changed.
That's true.
Lots of things.
And I didn't even ask. I assume, were you from around here as well? Where were you from, Douglas County as well?
My people were a lot of them, yes. My grandparents weren't. They were from Douglas County.
Uh-huh.
And
you were born in Granite City,
Granite
Illinois.
City, Illinois.
Ah.
But it was during the Depression, and then the family would go up there
For
and
work.
come down here for work.
In the winter, my dad would maybe have to go away to work because it was just hard to make a living. And that was 6 of us kids. Now there's just 2 of us. 2 of them, my brother has lived to 95. And then I guess I'm the oldest one
Oh.
of them that has lived.
Oh.
93. But he was 95.
But
Uncle
you were
Bud.
you were going back and forth and living up in Davenport, Iowa.
Yes.
She's working at Oscar Mayer
Really?
to
Make money and save it.
Wow.
save it. And then when she met Daddy, she was coming back down here to see her
my
family.
parents.
Ah.
And then tell Caitlin how you met Daddy.
Well, you've heard of people streaking the square.
Uh-huh.
My pastor now asked me, how did you meet Law? I said, well, I streaked the square.
You mean
And he said,
driving
you
around
did
the
what?
square?
And anyway, then I explained him to what kids, some may still do it today.
Driving around the square. And that's how you met Dad somehow.
Oh, that's great.
Well, Dad had asked who that sort of red-headed girl was.
Uh-huh.
And what were you driving then? She had bought her car. What were you
Wow.
driving?
I was driving a new Buick,
Wow.
special Buick, which was a 53 maybe. I
Wow.
got a picture of it at home. But I was so proud of that car. A big
I
accomplishment.
can understand. That would have been a big deal.
It was, but
And of course, they used to tease Mother. I think she'd tell the story that back then, Caitlin, people married so young, and Mom was career-minded, you know.
22
So
Well, I
they
got
thought she
married.
was an
Wow.
old maid
Wow.
back then.
girls down here in Booger County, they called it, got married too young.
Yeah.
And I saw that,
Mm.
and it sort of steered me away from it
Mm.
to work.
Wow.
to work.
Well, that's a wonderful story. I'm glad you didn't leave.
Well,
They met each other, and then the rest is history.
I worked, I guess Brenda's 70 now, and I guess Dad and I worked together.
You and Daddy worked together for many years, and they
Yeah.
were a great team growing up and seeing Mom and Dad work in the business. they really encouraged each other, and that was neat to see. And yeah.
If I could tell young people today to be more interested in each other than just themselves. But it seems like they've been neglected somewhere.
Well, and I was going to say, too, I have taken far more of your time than I said I was going to. We're at 11. So if we,
Okay.
I just have one more question.
Sure.
But just, we mentioned the ambulance service at the beginning. Just to briefly get it on record with this, too, tell me again, you ran it from the 40s through around the 70s.
71.
And then how would that work? Someone who had an emergency, they would call the funeral home, and then you would dispatch the hearse and take them to the hospital?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
A lot of them would bring them here.
Oh.
That
pretty
happened too.
bad shape.
Because back then they had party lines and things like that. So the phones weren't
Wow.
great. So they would drive here, and then my dad or grandfather or Charlie or whoever on duty would run them to the hospital.
Wow.
But-
And that happened a lot. Mom probably saw that. And then she would go on ambulance rides.
When it was a bad case, one time that my husband put me on my knees holding a little child's head that was bleeding all over my hands.
Wow.
And we made it.
Wow.
And the little child made it, Mama.
Yes.
Wow.
And the mother was in the same car with us. They had
Oh.
a bad wreck.
Of course, that was back then. I think all they had was an oxygen tank, first aid kits, and things like that. And then you just drove like crazy to get there. And Daddy never had an accident.
Wow.
Never did.
And my kids used to say, "Daddy, buckle up, buckle up."
Yeah.
He came home one day and he said, "My kids told me to buckle up, and it's a good thing I did today."
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, and
those,
then it took a toll on the family, but it was such a service. By the time you sold it for like $1, the ambulance.
Oh, $15 and $7 at the beginning.
Oh.
So, with gas and Springfield, see, was the only closest. We were on Old 60, double traffic.
But of course, it wasn't a moneymaker. It was just a service. But
was
finally,
just
when they
a
got out of
service.
it, my parents worked hard to help get it tax supported. And then finally, it started happening. So
We called a meeting at the Ava High School for people to come. They was going to have to sell and buy a pass to get the ambulance call. And that's when people begin to realize we're going to have to get a taxes or something.
I mean, it's such an amazing service that you provided
Yeah.
that, but so intense.
I don't see how they did it.
No.
Even growing up, and I was little. But anyway, that's, my family devoted that, and it never made any money, of course. It was just a service.
It was the expense of an automobile. And we had to take them to Knightstown, Indiana, to have the top of it raised for heart patients.
So it wasn't the hearse; it was a separate ambulance that you
Yes.
had. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It was the ambulance, and they
Okay.
had one with the siren and all that. But as far as the qualifications back then, like I said, it was oxygen tank and first aid kit, and then Daddy would put on the siren when he was coming through. That meant for Mother, "I need you, hop in, we're heading to the ambulance
And then
hospital."
My mother-in-law would go get the babysitter that I used once in a while.
Wow.
But anyway, that's thankfully that ended in
That period is
71.
yeah.
That period, yeah. But it gave us character
Well.
and perseverance, and yeah.
But don't forget to put all three of us involved.
Yes.
She wants her family.
I will make sure I do that. And is there anything I didn't ask that you would want to mention?
No.
Okay.
I think you've hit it, Caitlin. We've covered everything, honey.
Well, we've seen it happen.
Yeah.
And I think we just want to honor our lives, the loved ones' lives, and honor those. That's our goal, and that's what we want to do. And we have compassion for that. And to take care of families as we would want to be taken care of. That's our goal.
That sounds wonderful. And I so appreciate this conversation, and thank you both for taking the time to visit.
Oh, yeah, Caitlin, thank you.